Love you, Linda. Love you.
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing "Oh Happy Day."
One word prayer. Justice, where are you?
Justice Serve TV is on the air. Michael Bryant here. Hello, Linda Kenny Bodden.
Hi, I was in New Jersey all day. I'm
Yeah?
back at my home roots, right? And I always love going there. Maybe my sister will join us. She's from New Jersey, as you all know, tonight. But yeah, I'm back to New York. Just made it.
Just got back?
I know you were getting nervous when at
I
five.
was
I
very
wasn't
nervous.
on.
Yeah,
Oh no, you weren't,
I was
because
very
you and
nervous.
we should tell everybody that I called you on the way back, and we were going through the show and all, because what you don't realize, the amount of preparation that goes into these shows.
Yeah, you'd hardly know from watching.
no,
There's any preparation, but yeah,
yeah.
there's some.
There's
a
a
smidge.
lot, and we have
a very interesting show tonight, and I was going to say we're happy to have on this gentleman that we'll get to soon here, but I'm not really happy about it. In fact, I wish we didn't have to. But he is the family attorney for Maddie Mogen, obviously in the horrible Idaho Moscow killings case. But we want to get to that, talk to him. He represents an organization that, tries to help as a reflection of this horrible tragedy, trying to make some good out of horrible things. But before we get to that, all right, you're chock full. I got one thing, but go ahead with what you got.
I'm chock full, and it's a continuation of last night's show on Epstein. There were three things that happened today. It's really one. As we told you yesterday, that the Department of Justice had to file by Tuesday their motion that the judge required it to release the grand jury transcripts in New York, and they did file it. Late night court filings. Federal prosecutors said it would be appropriate given the abundant interest. They said actually the abundant public interest is the exact words on filing it, the likelihood, but they only want to release some things. So that's really interesting. But we did learn, and that's the first thing. And Doug Weinstein told us yesterday that's not going to be happening.
Yeah, we figured that. But it's so funny that the judge is entertaining this process. He wants, Ghislaine Maxwell to send in a letter, and
right.
This is the first salvo of the documents he's asked for.
Right. Yeah. And this is the unsealing request, because, as you know, we've been promised the unsealing of these documents, and then we don't get these documents. And then it turns out that in the filings, it was revealed that the grand juries that indicted Epstein and Maxwell didn't hear from any of the victims. And the prosecutor said the only witness at Epstein's grand jury was an FBI agent, and the same agent and the New York City Police Department detective were the only witnesses at Maxwell's grand jury. Okay, so no one heard from the victims here. I think that was the first time we'd learned it. This is the New York.
I think we assumed that they would have some alleged victims, survivors that would be testifying at the grand jury to give them
more than one
probable
person.
cause. But
yeah, more than one person. More than one person. So we did learn that. And so I thought that was very interesting. And we know the Florida grand jury, the Florida judge denied their opening of their grand jury proceeds. So, but we'll see about this. And maybe they'll be released because it's only one person that testified instead. Does that make a difference?
So what you end up with would be, I guess, mostly law enforcement materials?
Yeah, law enforcement
or testimony.
Okay. Right. So I thought that was a really interesting revelation that we hadn't heard from. And then on the other side, then we have politics going on, because the Senate Democrats had this something called the Rule of Five, and I didn't know, but it's a little used federal law that if 5 senators ask the Department of Justice to disgorge a file to them, to hand over, the Democrats, the executive branch, may be required to hand over the requested information to members of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and it's called the Rule of Five. I have to read more about it.
I think it went back. It's like the turn of the last century, not the one we're in. I think it was back 1900 at first. Was used.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, but we have to read, and all of us should look up this more because this is a little-known law, a little-known rule. And quite frankly, when I was driving, because I was out all day, I didn't have time to really research it. But it went with my grand jury proceedings. But I love to give our viewers and our people that watch us and our subscribers things to do, and that's one of them. Tell us about that, okay? And
so Schumer and he got 4 buddies, and the 5 of them went to the DOJ and said, empty the Epstein file.
Right, full and complete. And they're all Democrats on the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee and all. And so that's what they said. They went to Bondi and said, empty the file. Give us the file. We're entitled under this law. And I guess they're going to say no, and there may be litigation.
And they've got till August 15 to come to some sort of response.
All right, so that was my first rip and read was actually 3 stories, Michael.
Wow.
But do you want to do one? Or do you want me to do? I have two more
oh my
God reads. Right, I know. And this is when I was away. This is when I was in New Jersey all day. Right. The second one was, remember that we wiped out a whole ice skating team of young people over over Washington D.C. The Black Hawk helicopter, the fatal
the training mission that went bad. Yes,
the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter and the American Eagle Flight 5342 in January. Well, it turns out that the panel, the NTSB, began their public discussion today, and I almost drove my car off the road when I learned that apparently the NTSB asked for 3 more Black Hawks from the same battalion. And guess what they found? That the altimeters are all wrong. They read, like, I think I sent it to you, but I don't remember what it is, 20 to 150 feet. They could be, or what was it, 20 to 150 feet wrong? Yeah. So
obviously, and in that incident, I remember they were operating within a 250-foot corridor that was blocked off, and a commercial plane entered where it shouldn't have been, and the helicopter was not at the altitude it should have been. So yeah, if your altimeter is not telling you the right altitude, especially when we're not talking about thousands of feet difference, we're talking about hundreds of feet.
And they said there's only been a 70-foot difference that you could have. You're a pilot, so you would know this better than I do.
Yeah. And, well, you live and die literally by the altimeter, and so if it isn't calculated properly, it's tough.
So it's not just the altimeter of the Black Hawk in question; it's the gauge on the all the helicopters from that battalion that apparently are wrong, and that led to questions about all other helicopters, and then that led to questions about using 1970 equipment that you're trying to update with modern, and the two don't mesh. It's like if you put a Ring camera, I guess, on a I don't know, yo-yo. It's all I can think of, right?
Okay. So I would think whoever makes those avionics might be scrambling to figure out, because I can't imagine it's a problem that's unique just to that aircraft. Maybe it's everything they put them in. I don't know. But that's NTSB better be on that.
Yeah, well, they clearly are. They clearly are. There was a lot of sparring going on between the NTSB members and the U.S. Army. So now, and usually I wouldn't be interested in it, but I think because we wiped out a whole group of young people, and because now we're learning that this is, as you know, as a pilot, the most dangerous time in flying is your first 2 minutes, and your last 2 minutes are even more dangerous when you're landing. And especially if people in your airspace are going to be flying with wrong altimeter information, it's pretty significant to know.
Yep.
Right. And then I have one more rip and read, and this goes to, I know you and I aren't on dating apps, okay?
Nope. I've been removed from that process for many years.
Thank God. But there's something called tea, like spilling the tea. Okay. And apparently this dating app was very popular, and it had 2 breaches, but it wasn't just had 2 breaches of its information. It had to close down its direct messaging. People were putting on I dated this person, he was a real asshole, things like that. And all this information got out. So people's names and who they dated were on the app, and how they felt about them, and what their sex was like, and all sorts of stuff apparently got out. And this was breached twice. It was to privately share information. And T, guess what? Spilled the tea.
Yeah, and it's time to get the attorneys. Yeah, I'm sure there's some violation of some protocol to cause them. They may be closing down the operation. Who knows?
Yeah, and I love to. I'm sure there's a lot of people going through and say, "Oh my God, I hope my wife doesn't see this, or I hope my girlfriend doesn't see this." But not only my auntie, but oh my gosh, no one's ever going to have sex with me again.
Okay, you've been very busy today. I just have one quickie, and it's a Karen Reed, because every day you got something in Karen Reed. You know, we've reported the last couple of days there were motions to return the SUV, to return 3 different cell phones. There's now a motion just filed today in the Karen Reed case. This I found interesting, to unseal the impounded sidebar conversations from trial number 1.
They should be unsealed.
They're still under seal, and they've been asked. They asked before trial number 2 if they could have them impounded. What would that be called? Depounded. Anyway, to have them unsealed, and of course, I think it was appropriate prior to trial number 2. No, we're not going to open that stuff. But now,
they all should be unsealed. They all should be unsealed, just like. And let me bring
just
you
like
back to
ASAP
trial.
Rocky.
ASAP Rocky. There's a conversation that was sealed, and I want to hear it because I want to have people eat their words when
Since
they
we
find out
reported on that, and the judge was asking about us specifically,
right, and all, and so you know, we have to get back to that. Maybe we should file that FOIL request on that conversation. But cyber conversations are part of the trial; they should be unsealed. Simple as that.
Yep.
Once the
and we'll see how the court responds, because you know in Norfolk County they are fast at opening up their books and giving the public what they're requesting, or the parties what they're requesting. Yeah. You know that's just the way they just work fast.
Okay, so that's our rip and read, ladies and gentlemen, or gentlemen.
Okay, so
can I not say that anymore? Our peoples who follow us. That's our rip and read for today. As we, as you all got notification and come on, but we have a very special show, and one that we're now is going to turn more serious than our rip and read as we were talking about it. Michael.
Well, we have, as I said early on, as a bit of a tease, we have with us the family attorney for Maddie Mogen, obviously one of the 4 students killed in Idaho. And you know, we saw last week, we covered the victim impact statements, the sentencing, which was pro forma for all practical purposes, but the victim impact statements were unbelievable. And so we reached out and wanted to get Mr. Leander James to join us, and he does now. He is the family attorney for Maddie Mogen, and he's also, very importantly, part of a program, a process, an organization called Made with Kindness, the Made with Kindness Foundation. Mr. James, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
And you know, your words on the courthouse steps there were eloquent, appropriate, heartfelt, heartbreaking. How has this process been for you?
It's been difficult. You know, I've been working on this case for more than 2 years on behalf of Karen Laramie and Scott Laramie, the mother and stepfather of Maddie, and in victim crime victim cases like this, particularly, what you're dealing with, in my view, as an attorney, is not just the legal process and explaining the legal process to the clients to help them navigate it, but also you're helping them work through the sort of the arc of recovery to the extent they can recover from the trauma. And it's my view, in the work that I do a lot of crime victim rights work on behalf of all kinds of victims, sexual assault victims, all the way to murder victims and families, as we have here. And the challenge is to help them navigate this system that is relatively emotionless in a way. I mean, the system's a system. And then to help them with their emotional recovery using the legal process as best you can to do that. So it's been challenging. It's been difficult at times. I'll tell you that, for example, in the change of plea hearing, that was a very difficult hearing for the clients and me. I mean, my focus is really not on me, it's on the clients, so you'll hear me talk about them. It sort of set them back because it was so sudden, I think, and because there was really no closure, right? And you heard them in open court confess to murdering their child. I mean, that's awfully brutal. I'm pleased to say, though, I think the sentencing hearing was helpful because it brought a sense of closure when Judge Hippler read the sentencing and he went out the door and it shut behind him. Something about that was quite symbolic, I think, for my clients, and it was helpful to them. So the answer to your question, has been really challenging. I think we've made a lot of progress, and we're still it's still ongoing post the sentencing because of obviously the media and other things that we have to navigate.
Yeah. Attorney James, let me ask you a question, because I came from a family that when I was young growing up, we had a cousin of mine who was kidnapped and she was killed by a serial killer, never found. But the media wasn't what it was then as it is now. They actually tried to help, right, and have people recover. I couldn't believe, maybe I could believe it, and maybe that's what shocked me so much, the attacks on some of the victims here. How do you prepare, first of all, how do you respond to that? And how do you prepare your clients for ignoring that or challenging it? I'm not sure how you navigate that.
Well, one of the things you do is you help to keep, in this case, mother and stepfather focused on their healing process and what is helpful to them. So whether or not, well, for example, you mentioned the Made with Kindness Foundation. That has been an important aspect, I think, of Karen's healing process. And I'll put in a plug here. Anybody who wants to join her in that process can donate to Made with Kindness Foundation at madewithkindnessfoundation.com. But to answer your question, you keep them focused on their healing process. And with respect to the press specifically, there are strategies I employ in high-profile cases like this to help the clients. Okay, number one is you try to give one interview that's fairly comprehensive that can be accessed by media and others, so they don't have to keep telling their story over and over. That's number one. Now, we did that when Karen and Scott did give an interview about a year ago to the Amazon documentary One Night in Idaho, and Matthew Galkin was the director of that, and he handled it, we thought, very appropriately, and that was one of the things we wanted to assure that we handled appropriately. So you have them give one statement that to avoid multiple statements. You have their attorney run interference, which is partly what I'm doing here. I've been asked by them to speak on their behalf, and part of that is to keep the press from getting after them. And I sort of am a shield for them. And then as at this point, they haven't foreclosed other giving other interviews, but I can help them pick and choose what they want to do and when they want to do it. And why would they do it? Why do victims like this give interviews or speak out? There's really a couple of things that happen, you'll see in the themes here, and which is helpful in dealing with the media. And one is, messaging. You'll see in Scott and Karen's victim impact statements and their statements to the press, there's a consistent theme of trying to move on and of hope and healing. Now, I'm not going to be Pollyannish. It may be impossible to totally heal from a harm like this, but dwelling in it and becoming angry and so forth generally is not helpful, I find, to the crime victim. So it is helpful for them to show others that you can move through these crises and move on, and they hope that they're an example for other parents who are suffering, who can find strength in their strength, and they have a lot of strength. And so there's messaging you can help in the press and help navigate that with the clients. When they're not represented, the problem is you end up like the poor roommates here, for example, and others who were maligned in the press and in the dark press, I call it, in the blogs. And you folks know better than me, but it was really heartbreaking to hear their statements, right, when they covered that territory and talked about how they were devastated by the horrible treatment they were given by people who were so insensitive on the internet. So hopefully I answered your question. Sorry for being long-winded, but yeah.
No. I think it's fascinating, because that's one of the things. I went after people harshly who went after the roommates. I mean, how can you? Outrageous. Right. It's Michael Bryan could probably speak a bit about it. It was outrageous. It was maddening. As a parent, as a person, as a lawyer, how can you? You weren't in that position. I mean, many of us felt fear after this, and we weren't even victims at that house. I mean, so I don't understand that kind of damage, and I give you that people want to do, and I give you great credit for helping the families. I really do.
Leander, let me ask you this, and you mentioned how the plea kind of came together quickly, and that process, how involved, if at all, were the families?
Well, I'll start out by saying, generally speaking, to be quite honest, keep in mind the criminal process is run by the prosecutor who works for the people of the state, or in the federal system for the United States. And their focus is on serving the people of the state, not the victims necessarily. And that always creates a little bit of a tension when I work in these cases, because the prosecutor is focused on a lot, resources, how to navigate through the case to get the best plea agreement or conviction. And now in this case, I'm pleased to say that the prosecutor and the victim right coordinators that work for the prosecutor were very helpful with us, very engaged with us. It was a good process for my clients as best it can be. They interacted with us regularly, and when it came to the plea agreement, we were surely consulted and felt we were a part of that process and integrated into it. And as you know from the statement, if you saw it, that Karen and Scott fully, as they said, 100% agree with the plea agreement. And for good reasons we can get into if you want, but there's very good reasons why that plea agreement was the right way to go.
Yeah, please explain. What was their thought process, as you understand?
Well, yeah, the death row is sort of a misnomer. You might as well call it life row, because it takes so long for, if ever, for the death sentence to be implemented. So think of the stages here you have to go through, okay? The first stage would be a trial with 12 jurors in Idaho who have to unanimously convict him beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, there are what I call crazies out there, and all you have to do is go look at some of the blogs, and you'll see that there's conspiracy theories. There's all kinds of wacko theories about what was going on with this defendant. Maybe he wasn't the one who did it. You get someone like that on the jury, and you've got a real problem. Okay, that's a real risk. So I mean, heaven forbid he gets acquitted, right? And then and I think people who sort of were critical and said we should have gone for the death penalty overlook a lot of things like that. The second thing I think they overlook is the fact that if you get a conviction, it goes into the second phase, the sentencing phase, and you need a unanimous jury to impose the death sentence. Now imagine if you had someone on the first jury, on the jury, who doesn't believe in the death sentence. Maybe they want to acquit him because they just don't believe in the death sentence. They don't want that to be at issue. Or in the second phase, they won't impose the death sentence. So you end up with life in prison or something like that anyway. And then let's just assume you achieve everything and you get the death sentence entered. The average time that the defendant has been sitting, as of the statistic was 2014, in Idaho on death row is 12 years. But look at Thomas Creech. He's been on death row since January 1983. Okay, and there's no death sentence been imposed. In fact, I think it was converted to life. But the problem is then you have the post-conviction relief process, which people don't often think about, which is prior to appeals, and then you have appeals. And so for years you have these appeals, and during the appeals you're going to have, and I'm not taking a stand on the death penalty either way here. I'm just telling you that when you have these appeals, now you have a well-heeled outfit that is a nonprofit outfit that comes in and they advocate for the criminal defendant. And they have excellent attorneys typically. And we all know, these outfits are out there, these nonprofits are out there, and they're doing what they think is right. And it's a moral campaign for them. So whether the guy is the devil incarnate or not doesn't matter to them. Their job is to do away with the death penalty. And we're in the Ninth Circuit in Idaho. Okay. And on top of that, the Supreme Court, or not the Supreme Court, the legislature of Idaho in 2025, March of 25, passed a bill that the primary method of execution in Idaho is by firing squad. Now imagine going up in front of the Ninth Circuit trying to argue that firing squad is not cruel and usual punishment. So what I'm illustrating are all of these potential roadblocks to ever getting the death sentence implemented. Now, go back to my clients. What is their process during all of this? Every time this issue is raised again and again and again and again, it rips open that wound and there's no healing and there's no moving on. So in the end of the day, it was the right thing to do. The prosecutor here, Bill, did the right thing.
It re-traumatizes and re-traumatizes and re-traumatizes and re-traumatizes. And I assume that your clients were also concerned about the roommates too, who were, the one roommate, to me looked like she was this far away from, just collapsing in the courtroom. I mean,
oh, it's tragic. Yeah, you heard her story. I mean, you're both of them. I mean, they went home, locked doors for a year or more. and wouldn't go out. They were afraid that people had maligned him and so forth. I think one of the things that happened, I took one of our interns to the sentencing hearing, and it was interesting to see her, hear her comment. Now she's going to school at the University of Idaho. She's been following this case for the past 2 years. And I brought her on the inside of the case. She met the clients and she went to the hearing. And she made this comment I thought was fairly profound. And it was that, when I was listening to this case in the media and I was watching it, following it, it was sort of this abstract, really interesting case that, made me very interested. And I followed it. But when I came on the inside and saw it through our client's eyes, it totally changed for me. And I saw this from the inside and how real it is. And that triggered an empathic response on her part to understand. And what I'm trying to illustrate, I think some of these bloggers and so forth, and people who are feeding off of and even the comments you see, people who make comments online, they're looking at it abstractly from the outside, not realizing that these are real people going through tragic and horrible situations. As you said about the kidnapping situation, I'm sure it was enormously painful in your family. And when you see it from the inside and you get it. A lot of people don't these days. And the media and the internet have made it worse.
Yeah, there's no doubt in the true crime world, people are desensitized. They're watching these stories all the time, watching them unfold. And I will admit, having covered them from both inside and out, you sometimes have to steel yourself or you'll just not survive, because these stories are so strong, so powerful, so emotional. You have to kind of erect sort of a barrier, but you can't forget that the real people involved can't do that. This is their lives and their loved ones. So I get it. I understand how people it's almost like they got a remote control and they're just watching a TV show.
Yeah, I think, your work somewhat is similar to mine in that regard, because you're covering these horrible situations daily, right? I saw your show the other day. You were talking about this horrible shooting in New York. And by the way, I have a bunch of clients in New York. I work in New York. I know exactly where you're talking and it happened. Yeah.
Right back there, right behind me, 2 blocks.
Yeah, exactly. And I have depositions down there. What I was getting at is that you hear these horrible stories, and again, I want to focus on my clients, but I will say from my point of view, and I tell my young attorneys that work with me this, you do have to have some sort of distance or balance, because the stories are so horrific, all the way from the sexual abuse cases I deal with to the murder cases to everything in between. Okay, I have a number of cases, for example, under New York's Child Victims Act, and they're horrible cases, and they invade your mind, and there's a secondary trauma that can occur. So you do have to sort of protect against that, and I think that's true in your work too. But at the same time, you have to balance that with a sense of empathy and understanding of what these people are going through.
How do you prepare? I mean, again, I'm not a victim of Kohberger, okay, but for when my husband went out to do some coverage for another network, and I was alone in the house, and I was there, I was seeing his face, and I'm not a victim of him. It just was so horrible for me. How do you prepare a client to meet someone like that, who has that, to me, that I won't say snake eyes, but that it's like the emptiness and knowing what he did to not only your child, but other people's child. How do you prepare a client for that?
Well, there's some specific things you do, and it does help to have mileage that I've had with deposing and cross-examining and examining criminals. Whether they're a rapist, a murderer, or what have you. And some of the things you can say and help the clients with to prepare is to explain to them that you'll never understand these people. You'll drive yourself crazy trying to understand why they do what they do. And even if you asked them why they did what they did, and Judge Hippler did a good job at this in the sentencing. He said, a lot of people want me to have Mr. Kohberger tell us what his motive was. And Judge Hippler pointed out, I thought it was important. He pointed out, now, wait a minute, we have a man here that murdered 4 children. How likely is he to tell you the truth? And by the way, if he tells you what his motive is today, that's what he wants you to think his motive is. And back then. And so when you prepare the client, you prepare him that everything from the steely stare he's going to have, the insensitivity he's going to have, and just tell him that. This guy doesn't care about you, okay? He doesn't care about any of this. We'll never understand why he did what he did. He whatever was he a sociopath or whatever it is, I don't know. But, this case is not about him. And that takes me to the next step of it, and that is empowerment. It's really important to help the crime victims understand that you can be empowered in this process. He doesn't own it. You own it now. You're the one who has the power. And you can even just disregard him and move on. I often say that when my clients come to me, they come to me as victims. They've been victimized. When I represent them, my goal is to make them survivors, that they realize they can survive this and move on. And ideally, when I shake their hand at the end of representation and they go on with their life, they're thrivers. They can go on. They may have a huge scar, and they may not be totally healed over, but they're in a better place and they can move on in their lives. And that's really the ultimate goal. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot of legalese, because it's not. But as I said earlier, you try to use the legal process to help them with that holistic approach and for them to move on.
Yeah, use the word power. It's what I was thinking when you were suggesting that allowing a defendant like this guy to dictate, hey, you guys care so much about what I did, I'm now in power again. I'm now the one who's controlling this information. Yeah, dismiss it. Don't give that to him. But from a legal standpoint, in this plea that we've been talking about, was there ever a discussion that part of the plea deal would be for him to disclose some sort of motive?
Well, I want to be really respectful of the prosecutor here, and I don't want to. And I can say it another way. I just don't want to get into actually what we talked about, but because that I need to be very respectful and honor that. But I can tell you the answer in another way. It's my view that, as I said, and Judge Hippler said, making him state a motive or why he did this or give the details about what happened, I don't think that's helpful for a couple of reasons. One is, who knows if he's telling the truth? You're never going to know. And I have deposed, as I said, I have examined under oath and had to ask these questions of perpetrators. Why did you do it, for example? The answer you get raises about another 20 or 30 questions. It doesn't end. And you have more and more questions, and it continues to rip open the wound more and more. For example, do we really need to know how many times he stabbed each kid? I mean, do we really need to know that? Look, he took their lives. They're dead. Okay, we've lost them. It's terrible. Okay, now how do we move from
I wouldn't want my kids' autopsies and the stabbing to be out there in the public. I mean, I like that. I would not. I just throw that in because to me that would be the one reason why I would want that plea accepted.
Right. You don't need to get into all this underlying stuff. And even if you do with a perpetrator like this, you're not going to get the truth.
How about the issue I brought up was him disclosing where the knife was, because you're going to have these crazies in the future are going to say he didn't do it because he didn't tell you where the knife was, and the real killer would know where the knife was. Can you talk about that in any way?
Well, there are ways that may have been, forced upon him to have to disclose certain things in the context of a plea agreement. But I mean, is it really helpful to us? Look, he's guilty. I heard him in open court. I mean, Judge Hippler had to ask him these ugly questions. And at one point, for example, when he asked for each child, starting with Maddie, it was something to the effect of, I cannot convict you of a crime you didn't do, so I need you to confirm you did this. Did you stab, this child to death? And he answered, yes, I did. Or words very close to that. I mean, that was a profound moment. He's admitting to it. There's no question. He did it. End of story. That's the legal end of the story. I don't think we need to know, again, all the details about how exactly he did it, where the knife is, how many wounds were inflicted and so forth. I just don't think that's at least from my point of view, from a victim impact point of view, a victim recovery point of view, It's really not helpful. I understand why it's, prurient interests and other, people who have, are titillated by this kind of stuff, why they want to know all these little details. I get that. But I would ask them to think about the victims and look at it from a victim's rights standpoint and really think, is it really worth digging all this out?
Hey, Leander, that leads me to this question, which is, what's your background? Because I feel it's more therapist than attorney. So where did you get all of that?
Well, I have maybe a quirky background because I graduated, from undergrad from University of Santa Clara Jesuit School. I ended up teaching in France for a couple of years, and then wandered out to the West Coast where I worked up in Alaska, and I was a commercial fisherman up there in Washington. And, you think, well, what's the relevance of all that to what I do today? Well, the relevance is I had a lot of exposure to a lot of people in a lot of different contexts. I often joke up in Alaska, I fish with cons, not, these are guys on the land. So I was exposed to a lot of human conditions and human experiences. And I think also being brought up by wonderful parents, and particularly my father, who was an attorney, who taught me a sense of empathy and care for people. That all that combined, I suppose, to orient me toward, first of all, only representing causes I believed in. Even back when I started as a older law student and became an attorney 30 years ago, I represented people and causes even if I couldn't afford to represent them. I represented what I believed in, and the causes I believed in, the people I believed in, and that's been great because that really has helped me. But I struggle to answer your question directly because I'm not very good at psychoanalyzing myself, but I have come to a place early in my practice. I came to a place where I represent primarily individuals. I represent people who have been harmed, and I just maybe have a natural empathy. And I early on recognized that the law can play a role in the healing process. Different attorneys approach it differently. You'll hear attorneys that say, I'm a hired gun, pay me enough, I'll do whatever you ask. I've had a lot of, companies and others over the years want to hire me and pay me a lot of money, but I didn't believe in the cause and I didn't believe in what they're doing. So I didn't do it. And that helped me to maintain my center and also helped me to maintain the criteria that I need to believe that I'm really helping an individual recover their life. So
I always ask people when I do interviews, what made you, how did you get your DNA? And it sounds like your dad was very important to you, and that you're taking what your dad gave you and using it to help people. Let me ask you this with regard to, before we ask you the final question about what the parents obviously want you to say to remember Maddie. When my husband and I have been at CrimeCon a number of times, and we've talked a number of times to the Petito family, which were also victims. Different case in the sense of no trial, but their empowerment for that they have done for their loss. It seems to me to be so great that they're so empowered. They started a foundation. They wanted to talk just like you want to talk to victims' family. Have you seen like a change in your victim, a change in the family in terms of being empowered? Do they feel they have this empowerment? Can they take this empowerment, with Maddie's face and go forward? And how long before they're out to talk to the public again? Because I think it's so important that people see they can be empowered when they're victims.
Yeah, no, I'll answer that directly because I really have seen a transformation, and I can only hope that I've furthered that transformation. As an example, we have, you saw Scott give his victim impact statement on behalf for him and Karen. I'll just read you this one snippet that really hit me hard. He said, all parents dream of their children accomplishing more than them. We realized this dream. All we had not become, she was becoming. Karen and I are ordinary people, but we lived extraordinary lives because we had Maddie. I can tell you that 6 months ago, even maybe 4 months ago, Scott could not have read these words in a victim impact statement. He could not have got up in court and read it. And he was courageous on his part, and he did it. And I think to me that crystallizes the transformation I've seen in him, because at the early victim stage, people are almost vacant. They're struggling to process something that is impossible to process in a lot of ways. And so I've seen a tremendous change in them from the beginning to now. And for Karen, the foundation that she started, and that is helping children with scholarships and in their education, has really been a help. So the short answer then is yes, there's been a tremendous empowerment on their part, a tremendous change, but it's continuing, because now we go into this phase where all the gag orders lifted, other things are coming out in the press. We can't stop that. We're going to have to deal with it. And so my job's not done, and we'll continue to work them toward, as I say, becoming thrivers in life and moving on.
Hey, before we get some of your final thoughts on Maddie, I want to promote the Made with Kindness Foundation. You mentioned the scholarships. That's one of the things folks can help by contributing, but you also have education, and some of that I noticed included safety. So is there a targeted effort to make folks self-aware and keep horrible things from happening to them when they're off at school? And what's that part of the program?
Yeah, that's one of the prongs. I mean, look at what happened here. I mean, one of the safest places in the world is Moscow, Idaho. I went to law school there. I left that out. I did graduate from the University of Idaho, which was a lovely time because I wasn't on a boat in the middle of a storm in Alaska. It was nice to be on the ground for once. But it's a really pristine area. It's largely rural. It's a wonderful campus, and these kids went there, and this horrible thing happened. And it shows that even in that context, we need to be self-aware, and we need to teach kids self-awareness. So that is part of it, to encourage and promote that. It's in a way sad we have to, but this case is an example of why your kids really need to be self-aware and take reasonable precautions when they go away to school.
I tell you, it gave us a lot to think about, and the families, just their path forward, the loss of the child, the trauma, and to have you help them. You can see our viewers just love you. They love you, that you're there for them, and all. And I hope we haven't been part of that dark media that you were talking about, because we really wanted to get the word out.
Yeah, if I could make this last pitch, and I said it after their statement to the press, the young attorneys out there are looking for purpose and an honorable practice and extremely needed practice. I encourage all young attorneys to consider being crime victim attorneys to help crime victims. There aren't enough of us around, partly because, frankly, in a lot of ways there's not much money in it, and I'm doing this pro bono. But there's a real need, and I'd encourage them to do that. We don't have enough of us. The other folks, as you saw, the roommates and others in this case, I'm sad they didn't have someone helping them.
Yeah. So what would Maddie's parents want us to know about her?
Oh my gosh! I mean, you can look at their impact statements. That she was a bright, promising, lovely girl. She was a bit unusual as a teenager because she loved to spend time with her families, not so much out with her friends. She was such a loving, caring person. It truly was, and they want her memory to be out there for people to think about and to honor her when it comes to Maddie. And they live her legacy on with a foundation, with reaching out in their own way to other parents who are suffering similar tragedies. They're doing that on a daily basis.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, wow. All I can say is wow. I mean, I really have no profound comments except for wow.
So, Leander James, we appreciate your time, your role. I think you're doing both the attorneys proud and, the therapist proud as well. I think that's such an important role that you play, and it's a unique role, and you're the perfect fit. So we appreciate you being out front and helping this family.
Right. You're doing the Mogen family proud, and you're doing your dad proud.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm humbled by the experience, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Take care, sir.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me quote you on that. Wow.
Wow, that's all I can say. I mean, I'm not usually at a loss for words. Wow.
No, you're not. And what he said about some of the callousness that is we fall victim to that.
Mhm.
Because we're telling these stories and there's so many of them, and to some degree you have to push yourself away from that emotional connection, or you'll drive yourself insane, or you'll be reduced to a quivering mass of jello, because these stories are painful.
Yeah.
So for him to help people understand that, yeah, it's a story, it's a crazy story, it's salacious, it has outrageous elements, yeah, and there are real people that are affected by it.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and we're going to be talking about some of these elements, what the cops go through. We're going to be
Yeah,
talking.
and I thought we would
discovery.
focus on like the investigative stuff, the angle, and I do this really from the rearview mirror of Karen Reed, if there ever is a rearview mirror for Karen Reed, and what these cops in Moscow did. I wish I'd asked Leander this. I forgot. I'm amazed, having looked at the documents that have been released, at the level of detail and proper procedure.
Incredible.
It's no doubt why they found this guy in a relatively quick period of time, right?
No doubt. And it just was amazing when I looked. I started looking through them on the first day, and quite frankly, I don't want to do the autopsy documents. I don't think we should. But I started looking through them on the first day, and the detail was unbelievable. And you have to assume that these cops were affected, because you and I were affected by reading the reports, which were so detailed about what they were seeing. And also, there was more than just the victims are more, and I don't want to say this badly, more than just the people that died, more than just the two women you heard. It's all the kids that came in and the cops. All these people would have to go through this trial. And he's right. I mean, death row is really death by old age, for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. And he mentioned the Ninth Circuit, which incorporates most of Northern California. Northern California. I'm from San Francisco. I did escape, but about as liberal as it gets. So his point about how they would interpret firing squad under the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment.
Right.
Let's just say it would tie up the process even longer if it were to go that far.
And then these families would be living with this. And he made me rethink the issue of making Bryan Kohberger. I've been big on the issue of making him tell us where the knife is, only because I think that prevented him from prevents him from coming back in the future. But I think the police think that it's in the river somewhere anyhow, and it's never going to be recovered. So that it didn't matter. I think that's when I read the discovery, I get that impression.
So among some of the new things that have been released, and again, I like to look at this from the investigative standpoint, and we're looking backwards to some of the new video released, in this case from Latah County Sheriff's. It was another traffic stop. We've seen, I think, 3. There were the 2 in which he was heading toward Pennsylvania, and he was pulled over twice for following too close. Have you ever been pulled over for following too close?
No.
Yeah. Obviously, we know it was a ruse to track him, get some sort of further evidence.
Maybe some sort of DNA, I think.
Yeah. And then there was also a traffic stop, a female cop. I can't even remember what that was. But this one is a new one that was just released yesterday. This one actually has a little more back and forth with the now convicted killer. And you can just get a vibe from him.
And by the way, thank you all for giving Justice Serve TV memberships. I didn't want to interrupt. I don't want to interrupt Leander, if I may call him by his first name after talking with him, because he's, the family really had a jewel there with him.
Yeah, no, I wasn't joshing. The role he plays, it's like, oh yeah, you're also an attorney. You know what I mean? He knows the process, critical, but if he can't offer the compassion and the understanding that he does, who cares if he has a law license?
Yeah. It made me feel better about not having a proffer for the information. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so this is, the cop was a very interesting character in this, but listen how this plays out, and we'll talk about it. Again, this has just been released from the Latah Sheriff's Department.
Hey there. I stopped you going a little fast. You didn't realize this is 35?
So it's 35?
It is, yeah. So you go.
41?
Yeah, 43 is what the radar said.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Do you have your license, the registration, insurance? Were you wearing your seatbelt when I stopped you?
No.
No. That's no good.
Just being honest with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You guys are. There's absolutely no point in not being honest.
Yeah.
You have a radar.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a vehicle registration slip or something like that? Okay.
Or did I give you my insurance?
Yeah, this is your insurance. That's good. Thing is, I'm on a overtime shift right now. One of the conditions is we have to enforce seatbelt laws, and so to write you a citation for that, it's $10 in Idaho. Not a huge deal, but yeah. Be right back.
So interesting about that is, that he was so happy to be honest that he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, which is interesting. And you'll see how that plays out when the officer comes back to give him the ticket. He had a very interesting follow-up to that. But this guy, it sounds like a young cop to me. I don't know. But for going 43 into 35, that guy'd be busy here anywhere east of Idaho, because that's not much of a violation. But there, okay. We pick it up where he goes back to the vehicle and actually does Kohberger a favor. But listen to this exchange as he's wrapping up the ticket process.
All right, sir. Here's your license back. It's here, just an infraction citation. The only thing you're alleging failure to wear your seatbelt on the traffic stop. They said the fine at that's $10. You do have the right to a hearing on this if you'd like one. If you'd like hearing, you need to request it before September 8th at 8:30. Otherwise, they'll automatically be entered against you. You'll lose the right to the hearing. Just wanted to pay it. The mailing address there, website right there.
Yeah, I just have a question about that. So in terms of when you get a speeding ticket, that's obviously reported to your insurance. Is that the same thing for the seatbelt?
I don't think so. I think it's only moving violations that go to insurance, or things that might put points on your license.
Yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure. Okay. Could I get a phone number from you?
Yeah, why?
We need to put it on the citation as it goes to the court.
Interesting. He's hesitant to give his phone number.
Right, and he's why, what got me about?
Reference, I mean, I'm obviously an honest person, right? I told you I wasn't wearing my safety belt. When people lie to you about that, say I lied to you about that, right? Just for my own knowledge. Do you honestly go back and look at that, or do you just
With a seatbelt like this, I didn't check as I was coming up, so that's why I asked you.
usually?
I should. I noticed you weren't wearing it, and I'm on this emphasis. And like I said, I'm getting paid by ICD, and they want us to enforce the seatbelt law. So I was being more aware of that. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Have a good night.
So he's asking, what if I lied about wearing a seatbelt? How do you know? And the cop was honest. He said, I normally look when I come up to the vehicle, but I didn't really notice until I saw that you didn't have it on. Just an odd question to ask.
Odd question.
Is he asking because he's proud that he was honest about it, or is he asking because he wants to know, how easy is it to lie to the cops? I don't know. It was just a weird exchange.
Well, and the reason why, and also the question of why they want his phone number. And I hearken back to when he was stopped by the female cop. I think, he also asked a lot of questions. Well, I just moved to it. Why? It's, he's playing, in his mind, it appears he's playing some kind of mind game with the police. That's what it appears.
Yeah, well, criminal justice major, and maybe every life experience for him is, a learning opportunity. I don't know. I mean, knowing what we know now, he seemed almost normal. It's the best way I can describe it. In that stop, he didn't seem odd, except for that one exchange about the honesty.
Well, I think about how would you know, and asking why you want the phone number. I thought that was kind of bad. I wouldn't do that. You're stopped by a cop, and you're really, in a way, you're challenging them in a very manipulative way. I thought that's what he was doing. He was challenging him in a manipulative way.
Yeah, it did seem very defensive. Yes, no doubt about that. I want to look at just a couple of things from the police report, again, that focus on some of the investigation that we shouldn't be surprised at, but based on recent experience in other cases, it's impressive. So this
Very
relates to video camera that, obviously they looked for, believe it or not, they looked for video cameras. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And then they they followed up on those cameras where they were, and they went and got the chips and the material from them. This was a camera on King Road. We know 1122 was the site of the crime. And so I'm going to skip to the most important part here. So he reinstalls the camera. And it's one of these cameras that you've seen these before. You can see them on late night TV or getting it on your feed. You screw it into a light socket and bing, you got a camera. It's that simple. But he couldn't get it to work outside of that. So he goes back, he reinstalls the camera in the light socket, turns it on. He's able to watch it, and he sees the footage. During that time, the camera shows a vehicle entering the area at approximately 0356, it's 3:56 a.m., and leaving at a high rate of speed at approximately 420. So with this little tidbit, he immediately knows that in that 24-minute period, something's happened. They've really narrowed the timeline down, right? And then he goes on, he mentions the router that he seizes and takes them both back to the police station. It appears the vehicle left the area and may have traveled on Walenta Drive. However, the video stopped. In an attempt to see further and gain perhaps better resolution, I reconstructed the wireless network the camera operated on by powering on the router. I downloaded the Home iPro app on my work phone. I was able to use the app and download the video clips. These clips included audio, which was not part of the screenshots completed, and were able to capture a longer duration. In the clips, the vehicle's exhaust and acceleration can be heard, as well as seeing the vehicle leave at a high rate of speed on Walenta Drive. I mean,
this is good police work. This is boots on the ground. This is shoe leather, as my husband always likes to say. And they didn't destroy it. I mean, this is really good.
He could have, of course, if I should never compare any of it to Norfolk County, either the local cops or Massachusetts State Police. That's the other end of the spectrum. But it seems to me this guy had many opportunities where he could have went, got nothing here. But he continued to go to the next step, even beyond getting even the video that he first saw of the car leaving and the time frame. That's pretty good stuff. But he went yet another step further. Yeah. So
and then compared it, and this is what the cops should be doing. And people were maligning the police department initially. Remember, they said, "Oh, they're not."
Yeah, well, they thought they're not telling us anything. They're not sharing.
But they're not sharing because they don't want to tip. They're getting a suspect. They're getting there. They're getting the first steps, and it also goes to show you that crime scenes are not just the scene where the crime is committed. It's the cameras all around and the routes that people take, and it's the cell phone data and the geolocation, the geofencing, and all that stuff that Mike Easter we had on talked about. And people forget that anymore.
Yeah, and I looked at a number of those reports too, which of course to me looked like Chinese. But I'm sure if Mike Easter had looked at them, he would have known exactly what references were being made, what information was in there.
RTCs and all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he eats, sleeps, and breathes that stuff. This I thought was interesting. Here's another wild idea: canvassing the neighborhood, seeing who you can talk to. So this is an officer that meets up with a resident on King Street, states that about at 0400 hours he hears a barking dog coming from east of his residence. He believes that the dog, and I think that's the dog, is it Murray? Was that the
Murphy?
Dog? Murphy. He says he believed that was the only dog kind of in that area. Is there the dog there at 1122 King Road? He stated the dog sounded like it was outside, was barking for about 45 minutes until he believed someone must have let it inside, and at 4:45, and then it stopped. So, not sure about those time frames based on other things we've heard, but to focus in on somebody who hears the dog within that relative time frame is just another little piece, right?
In other words, like canvassing, and we learned from Karen Reed because you were there. They didn't even canvass 2 houses down.
No, my buddy 2 houses down at 30 Fairview is like, no, cops,
the canvassing,
never came by.
This was they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, crazy.
Here.
And it reminds me a little bit too of I mean, our reactions. Maybe I should just say my reaction. I don't want to pin this on you, but we had the same reaction when we saw some of the defense witnesses in Karen Reed. Oh, an honest, believable witness. How
Right.
unique. You know?
Right.
Surprising.
That was surprising. And here, every report I looked at seemed to be so well documented, so honest, so terrific, right? And the interplay between the feds and the local police was really good. I mean, and the state police. It's what Mike Easter talked about when he talked about being the backup for the phone on the Kohberger case, that there was this interplay that everyone worked really well. I mean, this was a tragic situation. This was I forget how he called it. He had a name for a case like this, and
he did too. What was that?
Yeah, and I can't remember it
I'll
right now.
Unless it pops in my head. I want to look at one more thing before we wrap up, and this is Dylan's statement. Dylan was the other roommate who literally, face to face.
And had to sit down. I don't know how people attacked her. I mean,
while I'm thinking about this is maybe a deep tease for down the road. Remember Jodine Weber, our former FBI agent,
right?
Not Mike Easter. I reached out to her about coming on to talk about this. She had some other obligations, but she sent me, she's so thorough. She sent me some notes. One of the things she mentioned, and I'll tease it now, we'll get into it at a later date, was this there was two witnesses, including Dylan and then Bethany, the other roommate who did not run into Kohberger, hearing a pop and a light flash, right?
Right.
Jodine Weber is convinced there's a very good chance that was a taser because it makes that popping sound and it flashes a light at the same time. And I would imagine, based on the injuries to the victims, the little pinprick that a taser might make is going to be lost in all of that, right? Yep. So it's a unique set of observations witnesses made that Jodine Weber is like, in her experience, that may have been a factor. And it also kind of goes into her maybe he was stalking somebody theory, because stalkers use tasers. Fascinating stuff. We'll get into that with her not too far down the road.
Yeah, I think we wanted to focus mostly on the victim impacts today and the good cop and the fact the cops did a great investigation. And then on another day, we'll go through the more details of the case and how the officers were called to the scene. But that was not appropriate, I don't think, for today.
So here we have this is Dylan, and you can see, even though it's redacted, we know it's Dylan. She wakes up about 4 a.m, and she says she can hear Kaylee and Murphy the dog dancing. I guess something they used to do. She knew it was Kaylee because she recognized her voice, could hear Murphy barking. Then she heard Kaylee go upstairs and say, "There is someone here." She said she thought she heard Kaylee run back down the stairs. Said Kaylee sounded scared when she made that statement. This time she said she jumped up and locked the door because she did not know what else to do. She said she called out Kaylee's name, did not indicate if she got a response. She then tried to call Kaylee, Xana, and Maddie on her phones. Was asked if she saw anyone come downstairs or heard anything. She said no. I don't even know how they got in, is what she said. We're usually pretty good about locking doors. We've also heard some witness testimony that this house they knew kind of had maybe more of an open door policy, not specifically, but not all that concerned about locked doors.
Right, and then he came in the sliding door in the back, which, I can understand that those sometimes don't get locked.
Yeah, and there was another witness statement I read about how the front door was actually open for a period of time one morning. So anyway, the roommates thought, well, we do a pretty good job of locking the doors. Anyway, she was asking again about the series of events. She said she opened the door when she cried out to Kaylee and then closed the door because she was scared. Said she then opened it again and heard who she thought was Kaylee, but could have been Xana, crying in the bathroom. Said she then heard a man's voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Said it was weird because the statement was not in a nice way. The voice was one she had never heard before. She calls out to Kaylee again. No more crying after that, and she didn't know what happened. She opened the door again, and the guy is right there, describing the male as approximately her height, 5'10", few inches taller, maybe not skinny, but athletic build. Said the suspect was wearing all black with masks that covered this is kind of worded strangely, just his forehead, and it goes around his face, showed with her hands, the mask exposing his nose, but covering the mouth area. Says she believed the suspect was white, did not remember eyebrow color or what his eyes looked like. Said when she saw the suspect, he saw her. That would be chilling, and just left.
Right.
Said she believed he was holding something near his stomach or belt line, using both hands to point straight out. So she was indicating for the police what he seemed to be holding. And then moved her hands apart and back together to simulate a bulge. And said there was it was black in color. She thought maybe it was a gun. Said the unknown object had an arrow shape, so perhaps that was the knife, right?
Right.
And she basically then kind of
And chilling, and to
treated-
have her, I mean, when she gave her victim impact statement, I mean, she talked about how she's for the past year she's been sleeping with her mother, both of the roommates sleeping with their mother, locking the doors. This is just chilling stuff, and that's why I guess Leander James has been so good for the family of Maddie Mogen. And now you understand, I think, when you see this discovery dump as to why the families want to start healing and don't want to have any more they don't want to have another 20-30 years contact with Bryan Kohberger. They just don't.
Yeah. Can you imagine all of this having to play out in a trial?
No, I can't. And and that stop we just showed him with the police there, was he wearing all black in the car?
That's a good question. Of course, I've gotten rid of it, so I can't tell you.
Take a look at it. In the meantime, I'll just say, great Dane Mom, mad respect for JSTV and the mods. Love the guests JSTV brings to us. My heart breaks to the families. Well, I thank God my only child can now breathe and begin to feel safe for her in the community work again. Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Okay, well, I'm spent now, so
yeah. So anyhow, we'll take a look. We'll go back and take a look at that video.
Yeah.
See if he was wearing all black. One of the questions I had, and I was wondering whether or not the families of the Kohberger families ever reached out to any of the victims. Because remember, one of the sisters is in health, health related, not a psychologist at all, but some kind of health-related license in New Jersey had it. And I was wondering whether they ever reached out to them or planned to, because we had the one statement from one of the mothers, the grandmother said, I'm here if you want to ever talk to me. And I thought that was another, I couldn't believe the strength of these families and all, just the strength of these families.
It's amazing what people can do, are able to do, especially with help from folks like Leander James. And we all, hope that we never, ever, ever have to be tested that way.
I hope that. I'd rather talk about fashion, which, by the way, somebody asked me what my suit is. It's a Dolce & Gabbana suit and an Amazon shirt. Of course, we get a fashion. We always get
and this is Untuck It.
To lighten,
so there we go.
To lighten everything up. But in the meantime, could you all hit that subscribe, like, share, notify button right now? Subscribe, like, share, notify. So we can continue to bring you, our mods, these guests, and these guests continue to want to come on Just to Serve TV and talk about experiences, because I think it was very interesting listening to Mr. James. I hope that we didn't ask any questions that put us in the dark media that caused the harms to the families, because I think that we do, Mike, you and I have both talked about that, how insensitive it was to attack the victims here,
and so lazy. Just can you imagine? We've talked about survival guilt, and I won't get off into that again, but it's overwhelming. I can hardly imagine. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine either. Just amazing, just amazing. And
so tomorrow, I don't know. We'll do something tomorrow. Oh, we might be getting into the suppression ruling in the Brian Walsh case, because we talked about it so much and how important it was, and now that 36-page ruling is out.
Right.
It's a document. Class, take a look at that ruling if you get a chance. We're going to talk about it, I think, in some detail tomorrow. So.
Okay. And then Friday we have Fridelson Friday.
Friday.
Friday. And then Friday morning, I'm going to be on Auntie Deb, and we're not going to be talking law, okay?
I'm pretty sure of that.
Something interesting that we're going to be doing, okay? I've told him if you come, all I can suggest to you when you watch Auntie Deb on I know on Friday morning at 9 a.m. or 9:10 a.m. or 9:15 when I come on, all of you come out without makeup. Come on without makeup on. Oh, okay. That's a little hint. Okay. So normally I wasn't supposed to do anything Friday, but yeah, we're going to be doing something a little bit differently, a little bit lighter, and all. And yeah, Jimmy, saw my half-eaten French cruller and was like, "Oh my gosh, how did I miss you?"
Yeah,
And,
what happened there? What
I don't
happened?
know. We crossed, but anyhow, it
Okay.
works better on Friday because we're gonna do something that's not related to really not related to law at all. I don't think, at least for my part. He may have legal questions, but for my part, it's not going to be related.
Yeah,
to law.
last time I don't remember any legal things coming up. I don't remember anything legal. So, all right. So, and for the Fridelson, we have Luis Rivera, who of course everybody knows in the
Luis
upcoming
Rivera.
Don Adelson trial. He may or may not play a role. We're not sure about his what he's got to offer that directly relates to Don Adelson. But anyway, that'll be this Friday.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, partner. Good job. I guess we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Michael Bryant. Until then, try to do the right thing. And
I'm Linda Kenny Bond. Before you go, again, hit that subscribe right now, like, share, and notify.
From the sky.